Welcome to UK Property News. If you are a pensioner in the United Kingdom right now, trying to stretch your retirement income while watching everything around you become more expensive, I need you to stay with me for the next few minutes because what I am about to share could genuinely change how you think about your housing situation and your financial security in these uncertain times. Something deeply unusual is unfolding in the British housing market at this very moment, and after spending considerable time analysing the data, speaking with experts, and examining what is truly happening on the ground, I can tell you that the property landscape has fundamentally transformed in ways that most people, especially those of us who have lived through multiple economic cycles, have never witnessed before. The reliable patterns we grew up understanding, the rules that governed how property worked for our entire adult lives, have simply stopped functioning the way they always did. Before I explain exactly what has changed and why this matters enormously for anyone on a fixed income trying to navigate retirement in Britain today, I want to ask you something. If you find this information helpful for your situation, please consider subscribing to this channel and tapping that notification bell. Your support allows me to continue bringing you honest, independent analysis that puts your interests first, not the interests of estate agents or mortgage lenders who want to sell you something. Now let me walk you through what is actually happening, because the truth is far stranger than what you are hearing on the evening news. House prices across the nation have fallen between 10 and 15% in real terms over the past 18 months. In a sensible world, in the world we all grew up understanding, falling prices would bring buyers flooding back into the market. Homes would become more affordable, young families could finally get on the ladder, and transaction volumes would increase as people seized the opportunity to purchase at better value. That is how property markets have always behaved throughout our lifetimes. When prices drop, demand rises to meet them, and eventually things stabilize. But here is where things become truly bewildering. That is not happening this time. Transaction volumes have collapsed by more than 30%. Instead of lower prices attracting buyers, buyers have retreated even further from the market. The fundamental relationship between price and demand that we have relied upon for decades has completely broken down, and frankly, nobody in the property industry can adequately explain why this is occurring. For those of you who own your home outright after years of mortgage payments, you might think this does not affect you directly, but it absolutely does, and I will explain exactly why in just a moment, so please keep watching. For those of you who are renting in retirement, perhaps because life circumstances meant homeownership was not possible, what is happening in the rental market is equally alarming and deserves your full attention. Here is another contradiction that defies everything we thought we knew. Rental demand and buying demand have always moved in opposite directions. When people cannot afford to buy, they rent instead. When buying becomes more attractive, rental demand naturally softens. This relationship has held steady for as long as any of us can remember. Yet right now, both rental demand and buying demand are falling at the same time. Rental inquiries have dropped over 20% in many areas, while buyer inquiries have fallen even more sharply. What this tells us is profoundly troubling. People are not switching between buying and renting as economic conditions change. They are withdrawing from the housing market entirely. Grown adults are moving back in with elderly parents. People are taking in lodgers to share costs. Friends are combining households. Families are remaining in cramped, unsuitable accommodation rather than participating in either the buying or renting market. This is not normal behaviour, and it signals that something fundamental has broken in how ordinary people interact with housing in this country. For pensioners especially, this creates a deeply worrying situation. Many of you have adult children or grandchildren who you hoped would become financially independent, and perhaps even be in a position to help if times got difficult. Instead, you may find yourselves being asked to provide housing, financial support, or both, at precisely the time when your own resources are being stretched thinner by inflation and rising costs. The supply situation makes even less sense when you examine it closely. Basic economics tells us that when supply increases, prices fall, and when supply decreases, prices should rise. The British property market is currently experiencing falling supply in the sales market, with fewer homes listed for sale than at almost any point in the past decade, yet prices continue falling anyway. The scarcity is not supporting values the way it logically should. Meanwhile, in the rental sector, supply has collapsed dramatically with over 300,000 properties lost from the private rental market in just 3 years. Landlords are selling up and leaving. Yet while rents have certainly increased, they have not exploded upward anywhere near as much as such a severe supply reduction would normally cause. The price signals that have always guided the market are no longer responding to supply changes in the way every economics textbook says they should. If you are finding this analysis valuable and want to understand more about protecting your financial position in retirement, please do subscribe to this channel right now. It costs you nothing, but it helps me enormously in continuing to produce this content for our community of concerned British pensioners. So what has actually changed to create these impossible contradictions? The most significant shift is that we have moved from an era of falling interest rates, which lasted nearly 40 years, into an era of stable or rising interest rates. From the mid-1980s until 2021, the general direction was always toward cheaper borrowing. An entire generation of property professionals, homeowners, and financial advisors built their understanding of the market in that environment. Every rule of thumb, every piece of conventional wisdom was developed in a world where money kept getting cheaper to borrow. That world has ended completely. Interest rates have risen from nearly 0 to over 5% in the fastest increase since the 1980s. This is not a temporary spike that will quickly reverse. Rates are likely to remain elevated for years, possibly for the remainder of our lifetimes. The mental models everyone uses, including many of the experts you see on television, are simply not designed for this new environment. For pensioners on fixed incomes, this transformation has profound implications. If you were considering equity release to supplement your pension, the calculations have changed dramatically. If you were thinking about downsizing to free up capital, the market conditions make this far more complicated than it would have been just 2 years ago. If you are renting and hoped that housing costs would become more manageable, the opposite has occurred. The breakdown of wage growth and house price correlation matters enormously for the broader economy and therefore for the value of any property assets you may hold. For 50 years, house prices and wages moved in roughly the same direction. Even when houses rose faster, there was always the expectation that wages would eventually catch up, keeping aspiring buyers engaged with the market. We have now entered a period where real wages are actively falling while house prices remain elevated. The cost of living crisis has eroded purchasing power in ways not seen for decades. Potential buyers are not merely unable to afford homes at current prices. They are becoming less able to afford them with every passing month as their real incomes decline. Property transaction chains are collapsing at unprecedented rates. First-time buyers cannot secure mortgages at affordable rates. Existing homeowners cannot sell their current properties. Downsizers, including many pensioners hoping to release equity, cannot find suitable smaller properties because they have been purchased by investors or converted to rentals. Every link in the traditional chain is broken simultaneously, creating a paralysis in the market that has simply never occurred before to this degree. Looking ahead, I expect this strange situation to persist for at least another 12 to 18 months, possibly longer. Interest rates remain elevated. Real wages continue falling. Policy uncertainty from government persists. None of the ingredients for normalization are present. This does not necessarily mean prices will crash catastrophically, but it means the contradictory, confusing behaviour will continue because the forces creating it are structural rather than cyclical. For those of you trying to make decisions about your housing situation in retirement, whether to stay put, whether to downsize, whether to release equity, or how to help family members, I urge extreme caution. The old rules that served us well for decades are no longer reliable. Seek independent financial advice from someone who understands this new reality, and be very wary of anyone trying to pressure you into quick decisions. Thank you for watching UK Property News. If this analysis helped you understand what is really happening in our housing market, please share it with other pensioners who deserve to know the truth. Subscribe if you have not already, and I will continue bringing you honest assessment of the property landscape that directly affects your retirement security. Until next time, take care of yourselves.